In this episode of Children of Heroes, we traveled about 2 hours south from central London to Felpham, where we interviewed Mrs. Věra Darlington, daughter of Flight Lieutenant Karel Kuttelwascher, and her ex-husband, Mr. Roger Darlington.
Thank you for participating in our project Children of Heroes. Your father served in the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. In fact, he was the most successful Czechoslovak pilot of the war with 18 shootdowns. Was flying something he wanted to do since his childhood?
As a child, he would play with model aircraft. He joined the flying wing of the Czechoslovak armed forces as soon as he was able to, when he was just 18.
In 1938, he escaped the country and ended up in France. What route did he take?
Well, 3 months after the Nazi invasion, he made a daring escape with some comrades by train through Poland, and he was hiding in a coal train together with many other Czechoslovak pilots and soldiers. He was then able to make his way from Poland to France, where he was drafted into the Foreign Legion to await the imminent outbreak of war.
Did he engage in fights in France?
Oh yes, he did. When the war came in 1939, my father was allowed to join the French Air Force, and he flew in the fierce but brief Battle of France in 1940. He claimed a number of German aircraft destroyed and damaged, but those were turbulent times and no records were ever kept of his successes at that time.
Miss, after the fall of France, he moved to the United Kingdom, where he joined the Royal Air Force. What were his memories of this time?
I wasn't able to talk to him about his memories of this time, but when France fell after just 3 weeks of fighting, my father managed to reach Algeria, and he escaped to Morocco and took a ship to Britain, where he immediately joined the beleaguered Royal Air Force. During the war, the RAF formed the 4 Czechoslovak squadrons. However, surprisingly, my father never served in any of these squadrons. Instead, he was assigned to the RAF's oldest unit, the legendary No. 1 Squadron. He was with the squadron for 2 years, and during which time he shot down a total of 3 Luftwaffe fighters and 15 bombers. This made him the most successful Czech pilot of the war. In fact, he won the Distinguished Flying Cross twice in just 42 days.
He was sent to the United States to help to recruit Czechs and Slovaks living in the US. How was it for him to change his role in the army?
I'm sure I'd have loved to remain in a combat role, but the Czechoslovak government in exile wanted to use his fame as a way of recruiting new pilots in the 4 Czechoslovak squadrons in the Royal Air Force. He did what he was asked, as he always did. When he returned to Britain, he served as a test pilot.
After the war, he returned back to Czechoslovakia, but he came back to the UK. What was the reason?
Well, at the end of the war, my father returned briefly to Czechoslovakia, but he flew back to Britain. He was opposed to the communist government and the control of his country, and he knew that if he stayed, he would be imprisoned like so many of those who've served with the Western Allies.
What did he do in the UK?
When my father left post-war Czechoslovakia to return to Britain. He became a captain with the civilian airline British European Airways. His premature death came in 1959 after a heart attack while on holiday in Cornwall. He was only 42.
What are your memories of him?
I can remember when he used to come back from his flights with the British European Airways and come and say good night because it was in the evening. And he used to take his shoes and socks off. And I can remember he wore black socks. And I've always had a thing about men with black socks. I'm sorry, it is crazy, but it's something that has stuck with me.
Did you see him often when growing up?
Well, not that often, because although we were living not too far away from him, it was difficult because my parents had by that time divorced. So we had to arrange for somebody to take me and my sister to my father's house. Brother was living there because when our parents divorced, we were split up, which was the usual thing with children. The girls went with the mother, the boy went with the father.
Was he seen as a hero by the public?
Very definitely. In Britain, the United States and Canada, he was famous and subject of many articles and interviews. He was known as the Czech Nighthawk and received medals from the British, the French and the Czechs. Unfortunately, the people in Czechoslovakia itself did not know his story until after the overthrow of communism in 1989. This is a very precious document. Well, it's the flight log that my father kept of all his time from before the war. When he was in Hradec Králové, he kept a meticulous record of every flight that he did and the outcome of the flight. He had the Czechoslovakia and French and then subsequently English records. So in here, in this logbook, are pages and pages of his achievements.
Those are combat reports. They wouldn't write combat reports for every flight, only when there was actually interaction between the RAF pilot and the Luftwaffe. Those are reports of when actually engaged and shot down German bombers.
Yes.
And there was one famous occasion when on one night he shot down 3 bombers in the space of 4 minutes, which was the pinnacle really of his success as a night intruder pilot. I never knew him personally. He died when he was only 42 in 1959. But the family kept all his records, his flight log, his combat reports, lots of newspaper cuttings, correspondence particularly between Karel Kuttelwascher and his wife during the time that he was in the United States and Canada. Because of my personal interest in the Second World War and aviation, I thought it would be wonderful if I could put together his story. It took me almost 3 years, and I'd never flown a Hawk or Hurricane 2C, and I'd never shot down German bombers, so I had to do a lot of research. But in the end, this book was published, Nighthawk. As Věra explained, the media in 1942 called Karel Kuttelwascher the Czech Nighthawk. He often wasn't identified by name in order that his family back in German-occupied Czechoslovakia would not be victimised. So I took that title. The book was published in the UK in 1984. They sold 18,000 copies in Czechoslovakia immediately after the revolution. The 2 most successful Czechoslovak pilots in the Second World War never flew with the Czech squadron. So Josef František flew with the Polish 303 squadron in 1940. Karel Kuttelwascher flew with No. 1 Squadron and achieved his successes in 1942. It's not that the other Czech pilots were any less brave or any less able. It's that the missions which the Czechoslovak squadrons flew were largely defensive. The 3 fighter squadrons would be supporting bombers on what they call circus raids. So their job was not to leave the bombers and shoot down German fighters. It was to protect the bombers from being shot down by German fighters. But in the case of František in the Battle of Britain and Karel Kuttelwascher in 1943, all their successes were achieved flying with a combat squadron, usually alone. Josef František was terrible at keeping flight discipline and would go off on his own. Karel Kuttelwascher's missions, which were called night intruder missions, were always on their own. Every pilot flew on their own a week before or a week after the full moon, when they would be able to see German bombers either taking off or landing from Luftwaffe airfields in occupied France. The aim was to get the Hurricane in position that as the aircraft were taking off to bomb Britain or were landing, to attack them at that point when they were low and slow and vulnerable. And Karel Kuttelwascher was the most successful pilot of the Royal Air Force in that type of very specialised operation. In the 3 months of the operations, which was April, May and June of 1942, he shot down 15 German bombers, 3 of them on one night. And as a result, he got the Distinguished Flying Cross twice in 42 days. His total confirmed record was 18. He may have shot down more. He may have shot down some in the Battle of France, but the official RAF credited record is 18 aircraft destroyed, which makes him the most successful Czechoslovak pilot of the Allied forces.
What profession have you chosen?
Well, I was for many years working in the education section of further and higher education, and then I moved to work in the trade union movement for a trade union sponsored member of parliament, and that was very interesting, very rewarding, and I enjoyed that. My last period of employment was with a further education college in West London, and then I took early retirement. My main love is classical music, but I'm a little limited now with my mobility, so whereas before I used to love gardening, I can't do that now really. Also because I'm within walking distance of the sea, I can always go down to the sea and just watch all the sailors, because I belong to a sailing club.
Do you speak Czech?
Trochu. Only a little bit. Only a little bit, yes. We had a very good teacher in London, Jan Kavan. He was a good teacher. I was hopeless at the declension of nouns and everything. I wasn't very good with the grammar. I really wasn't. I just said what I thought. You know, I just thought of what I wanted to say and just said it. And it might have been totally wrong, but I knew what I was trying to say. And Roger, being the perfectionist, always got it spot on.
How much do you think your father's legacy and your Czech origin have influenced your life?
I suppose my obvious thing is when anybody ever says to me, "Oh, you're English," I say, "No, I am not English. I am half Czech, and my mother was Welsh, and she was Welsh speaking. So I never say I'm English. I'm very proud of that. And since Roger wrote this book, I have discovered so many Czech family members, which is wonderful, and their English is not, well, some of them don't speak English, and I struggle with Czech, but we have maintained contact, and some of them have been over here, so I've made a point of seeing them and everything. They're always going to be there, foremost in my mind.